Alright guys, so here I'm going to show you how to make a quick table, and in that table we're also going to make a cloth object. We're going to make a drape over an object. Now when you would use this is mainly if you just need a base structure to work off for the cloth, and you maybe want to sculpt it in ZBrush or Mudbox, or it's just something in the background you don't want to bother sculpting, you just need it done really quickly. This can give you a step up, a leg up on this, and it can help out. And again, it can also be used for a base shape. So what I did here was I created a quick spline curve object here, and all I did was go to my curves tab and I clicked on the EP curve tool. Now the EP curve tool, I made sure it was set to 3 cubic. That is a lot smoother and organic in your lines. If you ever want your line sharp, set it to linear. That gives you a lot stronger edges on your line itself. So I'm going to close that out. So we have this here, this spline curve, we have it all laid out. So what we're going to do is revolve. We're going to revolve to make a quick table. We're going to make it polygons. And then we're going to actually create a blanket that we're going to drape over it. And again, this whole method of using physics in Maya, or the Ncloth, is so that you can actually get a leg up on things that you need for simulation, as well as if you needed something very basic to work on, like you want to start sculpting on it. Now we got this right here, and let's go and switch the surfaces. Now remember, in Maya you can switch between your keys. The F4 allows you to switch the surfaces, or you can just pull this down and go to surfaces on the drop down menu. We're going to go to surfaces here. We're going to go to our revolve. Always click on loft by accident. And we're going to set this to polygons, and then we're going to go to quads and count. Now I'm going to set this guy to 400. I could go a little bit higher probably, but let's talk a little bit of game theory here versus, movies and so forth. Now if we were going to set this out to mobile, you want to drop this even to 200, maybe as low as you possibly can, and still make a good silhouette, make a good object. Now if it's a hero object, they get a lot higher poly in a game. Now again, I'm talking about in context for games. And if it's next gen, you could even go up to 2,000, 3,000, even a lot higher, just depending on the game, whether it's first person or third person. First person can get higher polys for a hero object, in which the player is going to focus on a table. Table's part of the interaction. You would make that a little bit higher resolution, poly-wise as well as texture-wise. So just keep those things in mind. Things in the background will get lower depending on their importance. Alright, so I'm going to hit apply. So you see instantly we have a table, which is pretty cool. Now the nice thing about this is that we can actually use this as a little assembly line. We can make a little factory of modeling here. So let me do wireframe on shaded so you can see that they're still talking to each other. So I can go in here and grab my points if I needed to and change the shape of this and make multiple different types of tables. I can even turn it into a lava lamp if I wanted to. I can lower the size of the table, make it like a stand, or I can make it even bigger. Now remember, this is based on how many polys you have allocated in the object when you ran the revolve. So the lower the amount of polys that you have, the harder it will be to keep your silhouette or to keep your shape clean. Now let's move this a little bit out more so you can get the idea. So this is cool, and then if you like what you did, you do Control D, duplicate it, and you can have several different ones that you want to tweak out, and you can keep going and then hit Control D as you keep messing with the object. So let's give this guy a little bit higher poly for what we want to do. So I'm going to click on this guy again. I'm going to go to surfaces. I'm going to go to revolve. I'm going to do quads and count again. And I'm going to set this up to like maybe 700. I just want it to be a little bit higher poly. Maybe even higher than that. Let's go maybe 1,000. We'll do 1,000. And then we'll grab this guy and hit apply. There we go. It's a little bit better. It looks a little bit better there. So go ahead and move it over. So what I like to do when I am editing, I'll hide my spline curves. There's a bunch of splines everywhere. I call it constructions a lot of the times. Just slightly abbreviate that. Grab this here, add the selected object, and just hide it out for a little bit. So let's move this guy back. Move him up a little bit. And now we have a little table that we can work with. So what I'll do a lot of the times, Control D, sometimes I'll just duplicate this guy and then maybe hide him under construction also. So I can always have him on hand. So this one will no longer have history connected to that object. And just in case, I'll just edit delete by type history again. Nothing's really happened to this guy, but sometimes I try to keep it clean. Alright, so we got this guy ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is make the Ncloth, and you heard me talk about it in the beginning of this, to be able to drape over this guy. And again, this is used just as a base. If you want to get an idea of what you want your cloth to look like, you can even use this as a base piece of geometry to take into Mudbox. If you were going to use Dynamesh in ZBrush, you would have to make this thick, not thin like this, otherwise it'll start to disappear and decimate. And I'm not referring to decimator. It'll actually break it apart, which isn't necessarily a good idea. So let's go and divide this guy up. I'm going to divide him up into 50, I think is nice. And we'll do another 50 here. We could probably go a little bit higher. But remember, the higher you go with Ncloth, the longer it can take to play back the shape that you need. Let's go and raise him up above here. Again, we're using Maya's physics to our advantage. Now I'm going to create another ground plane. And this is just a reference point, so if my cloth is going to hit the ground, I have a ground surface for it. In other words, if I want it to. Otherwise, it's going to drape off of this and then fall into infinity. We don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to grab this guy here. Now, if Ncloth fails to work like you want, what you can do is you can actually triangulate all of your geometry if you need to. That I found out in the past that actually does help Maya calculate some things. It allows it to parse the geometry a little bit better just by you triangulating it. Maya seems to understand the surface better. It's almost like when you import an object from a game. It's all triangulated. It just understands the math a little bit more. So if you do run into that, just keep that in mind. You can triangulate that if you keep running into a problem with your simple square. So let's go in here and let's go to our N dynamics. That's where the Ncloth is found. And I'm going to go in here, go to N mesh, and I'm going to go create Ncloth. Now when you open up the options, there really isn't anything here other than create a new solver. So we'll just go and create Ncloth. There he is. And then we're going to grab the table. And I like to do this all at one time. It isn't as bad as older versions in Maya where it required you to do them all at one time. Otherwise, if you added another passive object later on, Maya would be like, screw you, I will not do it. I'm not sure why he has a Russian accent, but you never know, Maya, you know. Could be Russian. Alright, so we got these pieces here. And I'm going to go in here, and now that I've created this as an Ncloth object, I need objects for it to bounce off of. That's where the passive comes in. So I'm going to go to my NMesh again. I'm going to say passive collider for both these guys. Now, one of the most important things that everybody seems to leave off, and I noticed this too in some videos in the past that I've seen when I was just learning Ncloth, is you have to make sure that the Ncloth and the passive object have to have the same thickness. If they don't play back correctly, and you can see your cloth kind of float over the surface, which is not ideal. Let's go 300 here, 300 playback. I could probably go a little bit higher. Let's do, I think in my class we did like 1,000, just to give us plenty of time. Let's check the thickness on this guy. So we can hit Control A, look at the properties for him, and we go under collision, and we can see, let's see what our thickness is set to. It's 0.145. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, and go to my table. And Maya does this random numbers it gives for thickness, which is kind of stupid, but it just does that. And I'm going to set these all the same. Go to another one. Notice it's making this one different too. Why? Only God knows why it keeps changing the numbers. Alright, so each one of these have the same thickness, which is great. So let's do a playback. Alright, let it fall. And again, you can use this as a base for your sculpting to get a nice beginning for your object. Or if you just don't have the time, you have a lot of cloth objects you have to deal with, you can set this in the background and may not even have to sculpt it. But one thing I do want to recommend, let's go back to our first frame real quick here. Since we're using this object here, make sure that you want to texture it, make sure that you first assign a new material to it. We'll just do it real quick. You can do it after the fact too. But you got to make sure that the history is clean. And then we'll go in here and let's switch the polygons. Create UVs, and we're going to do planar map, and we're going to choose best fit plane and apply. So now if we had a checkerboard pattern on this guy, or you had like, you know, a picnic blanket that's got checkerboards, or you got your grandma's favorite quilt texture on here, fitting to 0 to 1, it'll actually display nicely and fold nicely, even with the Ncloth active. So let's hit play again. And Maya will do this sometimes, say, Nucleus is too large to playback, and I'll show you a quick trick to be able to actually get it to playback for you. We see a draping, bounces, and you decide exactly where you want it to end. You're like, wow, I really like this. Let me let it hang down a little bit more. And every once in a while, based on density, sometimes Maya will make the mistake of running into intersecting itself, even though you have the intersection on. So I'm going to play this a little bit longer so it stops fluffing. It's getting a little fluffy on the sides. It's kind of reverbing the motion on this object. And it is a bit slow. It happens. My Camtasia is probably not helping. There we go. So say you like this. You thought, man, this is great. This could be like a little Italian restaurant. You know, maybe they made it too long or something. I can go in here now. If you wanted, you can do Control D. And you now have that guy eternally trapped in time, no longer running the simulation. And that could be your object. Now we unwrapped it. We gave it a new material. And now all you need to do is apply a texture to it. And the texture should display just fine. So let's see if we can grab a texture for him real quick, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So we got a Lambert. Let's grab this guy here. If we wanted, we can just do a regular checkerboard pattern on him. Click on my texture there, and you'll see that's actually not bad. A little bit stretchy, it appears in some areas. So what we can do, let's test this out even further, because that's not like the best texture in the world. So let's go ahead and choose a different one. Break the connection. Dun, dun, dun. Let's go to File. Checkerboard pattern in Maya sometimes sucks. Let's go to Copy UV Sets here. Okay. Oh, apply that. There we go. So it is a little bit stretchy in some areas, and that's because it's treating as an actual cloth. You'll notice the squares really aren't stretching in any way. So if you do run into that problem, what you can do is also unwrap it after the fact, just in case. So I forgot about that. There's a slight stretch that happens because it's treating like an actual cloth and weight being tweaked out. But you can also change that so your playback's a little bit different. So I've gone to my Ncloth here. You can see you can control friction. You can control dampness. There's even a stickiness if you need it to stick again. Like wool, like if you look at wool, it's a little bit sticky but more higher on friction. If wool is wet, that does get a little bit kind of slightly sticky. A tissue, a wet towel will definitely be sticky, right? If you remember as a kid, you would wet a towel and stick it against the wall. So these properties are here all for you to play with. We can mess with the point mass here, self-collision. We can have it as vertex or face here. If we go down here a little bit more, I'm just pointing out some of these properties here for you. Let me see here, field distance. I'm looking for the stretch resistance. So we can resist stretchiness on this guy by simply typing in, we'll have the resistance be up to, let's put it back to the frame 1. I like to do this in frame 0 when you do this, because otherwise it can break on you. There we go. So let's set this resistance to like 50. I think it should go that high. It's been a while since I played with that setting. And we could probably go a little bit higher. So now when you play back, you see a little bit less of that stretchiness happening in your texture. Probably need to go a lot higher though. But you can see how this is playing a little bit there. A little bit tweaky. Almost looks like it's projection texture, right? Like sliding. And again, you can also unwrap this guy afterwards. And if you look at the UVs for them, if we go to our Windows UV texture editor, probably need to stop playing for that to happen. There we go. You'll notice it's now folded it according to the object itself. So you'll have to do an unwrap on this if you need to. So in other words, we can grab this guy, go to UVs, check it out, grab it, and unfold. There you go. We've now fixed a lot, not all, but a lot of our issues. Now wherever it's pinching, you can grab these areas and even do relax if you need to, such as like in the pocket there, or just unfold locally in certain areas. Okay. Or even apply planar map back on this object. We'll just say create UVs based on plane. Based on camera projection, excuse me. Camera projection. There we go. And we'll look at the UVs now, those little cocky jerks. Go to UVs again, grab them, and you can run the unfold on this guy. And it does it a little bit cleaner. Still has that same corner issue that happens. We can also do a planar map. Like that. Or, what you can do if you want to be sneaky, is do automatic mapping. Now unfortunately it does shatter some of it. Don't let that disturb you. You can go in here and grab the edges and move and sew if you need to as you go. One that I like to do, and I'm just showing you really quickly how you can unfold this guy. Notice how the cloth is laid down on the object. What does it look like? Kind of a cylindrical object, right? So if you want to be fancy, you can grab this guy, faces on the side view, everything but the top. It's not perfect, but I'm gonna have to end this video soon. And you can do, hey man, you're cylindrical object, jerk. And you'll get like a nice clean layout for the object here. You need to correct the stretchiness that is happening. And you can mess with the scale a little bit if you need to. So we can stretch it out a little bit here. And then from there you can planar map the top. This all depends on what kind of texture you want on this guy. But at least this gives you an idea of how you can approach this. Okay? Just got to be tricky because sometimes mine can be a jerk. Because even though you unfolded it, the Ncloth will actually update. It used to not do that. It used to just lay on there and not mess with your UVs, but it looks like it really shapes it and tweaks it out. Alright, so hopefully that helps you guys out. If you do run into any problems, let me know. You can also planar map this guy and split the UVs down the middle if you need to. Let me show you that real quick. So if you went from the top down, and we went in here and we just did a planar map, and I went in here and grabbed the edge, we'll just grab this edge here, grab that all the way through. If you want to, you can go in here and let's go to our UV texture editor. And with that edge selected, you can cut UVs. So now we'll go to a UV shell, select shell. And you can unfold these guys one piece at a time is another way you can do this. And notice it unfolds really nicely. We'll go to this guy here, select shell. And unfold that. And all you need to do is line them up. That's super easy. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. And then you can stitch the rest of that. If we looked at this in real time, you'll see that it unfolded like a champ. So there's multiple ways to skin the cat on this guy. And let me know if you guys have any questions. That's Sean's quick way to tackle these. I'm showing you all different ways to unwrap. This one is my preferred way. I wanted to make sure I did that before I left here. And we're done. For real. Not joking.